Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pequeno Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today we are delving back into the world of Final Fantasy by playing World of Final Fantasy. I am joined, as always, to discuss the Final Fantasy franchise by Chris ZombiePie Redacted. Hello.
I look forward to my input about World of Final Fantasy being deeply immersive, almost as deeply as immersive as the House of Illuminati's Willy Wonka experience.
I was wondering how you're going to get that in there. Way to go. We're also joined, as always, by one Jeff Rude, former Off the Deep End's editor and host, current Final Fantasy person.
Not so far. We got some announcements to be made, but go ahead.
Hello. It's nice to talk to you guys today. It's going to be a podcast about a game that's just maybe a little bit slow for my tastes.
Great form.
If you don't mind that. Also, perhaps just a little bit too talky.
Dear reader.
But anyway, yeah.
Ronnie the Bear.
Okay.
Man, I hate this game.
All right, we will discuss World of Final Fantasy in a bit. Before we do so, I'll do our normal plug, and then ZP, then you can ruffle things into your microphone.
I have to get things in position, so just
Only
say
then. You can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/deeplistens. That would be where you could, give us money to help us continue producing the show. We recently hit a total of 30 patrons worth of finances coming in. So Sonic the Hedgehog 06, that podcast is out. The Ultima 9 podcast might be out by the time you're hearing this. But we've got Mass Effect Andromeda on the docket for if people, get up to 40 contributors. And if we get up to 50, we've got a vote going on in the Discord coming up to decide which terrible game we have to play next. So go ahead, get in there. The Discord's fun. It's full of cool people. And the hosts of the show also. And now, ZP, you can do your nonsense.
Wait, no, we also have to give an update in terms of things and stuff related to Off the Deep End because we are in solidarity with the main podcast. Just a friendly reminder, thanks to you all crushing the donation incentive goal, Off the Deep End, including Jeff, we're pulling him out of retirement. Off the Deep End will be playing Ultima 9.
The second half of Ultima Sonic 69.
And remember, unlike the main podcast, we have additional games. For example, if we get even further in our donation goal, I forgot the numbers because, I don't write
think it was
this
40
stuff down.
and then Mass Effect Andromeda, right?
Yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda, and then 50, we play Lunar Dragon Song. Cool. Braden is contemplating if we get to Mass Effect Andromeda before the publishing of the Ultima 9 podcast, he will commit himself to finishing Ultima 9. Like, actually finishing it.
Yuck.
Yuck indeed. So, ZP, I heard you've brought a thing?
Yeah, and in fact, I got to rapid fire this because unlike other episodes, I decided, hey, this is a big, slow, enjoyable ride that talks a lot. Against Gino's wishes, I have 2 food reviews today.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So for the first review, part 1, I bought something that I am under the impression this is good. This is a Nutella Be Ready wafer bar.
Oh.
This is a crispy wafer thing that has Nutella inside it. It looks a little bit like a French baguette from the picture that's on the wrapper. I don't know if either of you have tried these.
No.
I
So
have not.
It's like a croissant with Nutella in it.
Oh, huh. Yeah, that looks like some crossbreed between a French baguette and a turd. It has the okay. So this crispy wafer is very similar to those like God, what are they called? The Hello Panda chocolate-filled Asian market cracker things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
you
I know
what
exactly
I
what you're talking
real
about.
OG. But it smells like it. I bet that this is basically those, except they use Nutella. All right. I'm gonna. Oh. Uh-huh.
Do you think we get any ASMR crossover people, Jeff, just for this stuff?
I'm going to leave that to you. That's on the promotion of the show. If you want to tag this as ASMR content.
Uh-huh. Well, that's basically like those panda things.
But with a superior filling?
You've heard it here.
But with Nutella. The wafer is definitely lighter. That is a thinner wafer. It's crunchier, too, than those panda cookies. Panda confections. I don't know what those are. I know that not everyone actually likes Nutella. Some people just don't like artificial hazelnut or that hazelnut candy and coffee flavor. I'm somewhere in the middle ground. I'm not like one of those weirdos like Joel Embiid who supposedly eats an entire jar of Nutella when he gets sugar cravings, but it's candy. I try to avoid it. That was good. I wouldn't say that it's great. It's not going to make you a believer of Nutella if you don't already like Nutella. I'm going to give that a solid 4.5.
Excellent.
It does the job. It does exactly what it promised.
On to the next thing.
Okay, this I have actually showed you to. This is a bag of Lay's potato chips, but they are a different, unusual flavor. Boys, do you remember me sharing a photo related to potato chips in the food channel on the Discord?
I don't, but is this crawdad flavored?
No. This is IHOP's Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity strawberry-topped pancake with syrup and artificial bacon-flavored potato chips. Actually, no, it was arbitrary water. So these are basically the IHOP bacon and strawberry pancake meal, but in potato chip form.
Oh, God. They're all in one thing?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, fuck. Oh, sorry. Gino's trying to get us on terrestrial radio waves. I can't say that word.
You can say it. It's fine. No one will bother us.
Oh.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. It smells bad.
I bet.
Oh. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, these chips. They look like... Oh, my God. They look like the chips that have the red chili powder, except it's lighter because it's strawberry. It's a dusting. It's not a complete coverage of the chip. Yeah, I can smell the strawberry.
Can you smell the bacon?
I can smell the maple syrup. I cannot smell bacon. But the smell is a very artificial sugar smell. Now, I know that there are people who like chips that are sweet. For example, like a caramel chip or something like that. I'm okay with that. Obviously, if I'm going to eat chips, I want them. And these are American chips to my British friends. Your chips are a disaster. I hate them. Put them in the goddamn trash. British chips suck. I guess I'm going to eat this.
Yeah, you are.
Oh.
Yeah?
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, this is confusing. This is one of the most confusing things I've ever eaten. Okay. I don't even know how to... Okay, I have to eat more because I don't know how to process this.
Oh, no. He's confused his senses. He's bamboozled it from all angles.
Huh.
So
Okay, it seems-
paint me a word
huh.
picture. Use your words, honey.
All right, so the strawberry part of this is just strawberry powder. The strawberry powder they use in a lot of candies.
Mm-hmm.
So it tastes like strawberry candy when you get hit by that powder.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a maple syrup. And the maple syrup is different. Like, it was not mixed with the powder.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the ingredients. They didn't use bacon. They used bacon fat. So the problem with this chip is that nothing is it's not fully mixed. So depending on the chip, you might have a strawberry chip, you might have a maple syrup chip, you might have a bacon chip. And that's the confusing part of this.
I think I'd prefer that to every chip being strawberry, bacon,
Okay, now that
maple.
was a chip where everything was kind of distributed a little bit more equitably. That's a lot?
Is it good?
No.
Oh.
I mean, it's Lay's potato chip. Lay's, look, there's a lot of things you can say about big monolithic American corporations these days. These two gentlemen that I'm with have a lot to say about that subject. But Lay's Potato Chip Company makes a good goddamn potato chip. Potato chips are very good. You know exactly what you're getting when you buy a bag of Lay's potato chips. They have taken base Lay's and put a bunch of flavors that are very weird on a potato chip. They smell weird. They taste weird. I'm going to give this a hard 2.
Okay, please stop eating the potato chips. I was gonna do a food bit, but your food bit went so long, I'll save that food bit
do
for
your
another
food
time.
bit.
No,
Do your food bit.
no.
We're going long. That's the theme of this episode. Going long and slow. Go. Shoot your shot.
Okay, I
Kobe.
have a question. Actually, no, I'm not going to give you options because the options are. I'll save the other one, the one that's I think going to be more visual. I have in front of me a box of Frankfurt brand gummy Lunchables.
Oh.
This is gummy cracker stackers, artificially flavored. I would describe what I'm seeing as alarming. Its ingredients include glucose syrup, sugar, gelatin, sorbate, citric acid, malic acid, artificial flavors, carrauba wax, palm kernel oil, potassium sorbate, artificial flavors. Let me turn this. I'm going to turn the camera on. You can't see. You listener can't see, but you, fellow co-host, can see that this is it's
Wait.
Oh boy. It says sealed for your protection on the side.
Okay.
There's another I have another box of these that I am saving probably for the community endurance run. Let's get this thing open. It's not a significant source of anything. It's got proteins in it somehow. There's a choking warning though on the back of this. That's always good. Let's crack this thing open. Oh goodness. Peel here.
Always. I thought my food had a weird neon look to it. Your food has an even more weird neon look to it.
It's incredibly neon. It's upsetting to look at. This is. I don't that they tried to reproduce cheese and meat.
I don't know what part of the food pyramid has foods that look like highlighters, but I don't know where you put that.
This is alarmingly difficult to get open. I'm peeling. I am trying to peel. It says peel here, but it does not want to be peeled. Oh boy, do I need scissors? I'm a strong gentleman with pretty good grip. And this is not... I can climb up a rock climbing wall pretty easy, and this is... It's not budging. I think it's scissor... It's like sharp implement time. I'm gonna stab and cut it. I'm gonna use a pen. Get in there, tear some holes. Oh boy, an aroma has. Now that I have cracked into this thing, an aroma has entered the room. It's not pleasant. Okay, it's a cracker situation. So I've got 2 cheeses, 2 fake cheeses. Oh boy, 2 fake meats, and some crackers. What do you guys? What do you want? I'm gonna do 2 sandwiches.
One of each.
Okay. So let's get some crackers out. I got 2 crackers. They smell like gummies. I'm gonna add a pink meat.
Jeff, are you opening a can of liquor anywhere in your close vicinity?
It
Not
smells
lately.
like strawberry, I think. And I'm gonna add some orange cheese. That doesn't smell good. And I got myself a cracker stack. Let's. All right. It's not a good gummy.
Really?
No, it's very rubbery.
Have you had those Haribo constructed burger things before?
No.
They're pretty chewy.
Yeah, that's kind of like, this seems like one of those Haribo constructed gummy burger thing. Those also are very chewy, except the upside of those is they generally have like 1 or 2 pieces that are very soft.
These are not very soft. They're very chewy. It is a gummy. They're kind of a fruity flavor.
So vibe check, like, where do we all stand with gummy candies? Because I feel like the people who don't like gummy candies really don't like gummy candy.
I like gummy
I'm fine with
candies.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like chase them down, but
No.
I don't mind them.
First sandwich, 1 bite. I'm not going to have much of it because they're very chewy and they're hard to eat. I'm going to make a second sandwich now out of the red meat and the yellow cheese.
Now, this is more enjoyable, Jeff, than you talking about how much you love this video game and how it's just a positive addition to your life quality, right?
Okay, the red meat smells like a normal. It smells like gummy candy. There's not a distinct flavor, I would say, to any of this. It's just like, hey, we had some gummy candy on the floor. Let's package that up and sell it to kids. Okay, here's the next one. The flavors are different,
Mm-hmm.
but also I would just say artificial, kind of like fruit flavor. That's what I'm getting from this.
Okay. I was gonna, yeah.
It's not good.
We went a very sweet bent with the food reviews today. I'm very satisfied
I think I'm detecting
with the synergy.
I'm detecting pineapple, artificial pineapple from that one.
Like, with the gold standard of artificial pineapple candy being the white gummy bear, where does it compare?
It tastes like a white gummy bear.
Okay.
Is there a gummy, like a pineapple flavored high chew?
Yes, it's usually a Japanese only exclusive, but obviously you can find it in your local Asian market.
Love a high chew.
All right, I'm gonna
I bought some yogurt flavored haichus.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna say that's a.
Which basically tastes like a Mamba without the fruit flavor.
I'm gonna say the Lunchables sandwich stacker, a cracker stacker. I want to give that like a 2. It's not a good gummy, but it's not like terrible. I don't feel like I've been food poisoned like I did with the candy corn that tasted like meat. So yeah, I don't feel food poisoned, but I wouldn't go out of my way to buy that ever again. I've got another one of these though,
Mark of quality,
for when we do the community endurance run. So there we go. I also food poisoned myself today. Now, speaking of food poisoning, let's talk about World of Final Fantasy.
Sure.
Young Jeffrey, could you tell us about the game? What is this game?
Yeah. So, sorry, when I thought about it, my brain went totally blank. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Does
World of
anyone else
Final-
smell toast?
No, I smell
Okay.
pancakes.
Okay, so World of Final Fantasy. This is in some sense, a very conventional Japanese role-playing game. It was made in Japan by a Japanese former Shadow developer. We'll talk about that. It looks like a JRPG. It moves like a JRPG. It plays like a JRPG. It has pretty much like it has like telephone cargo cult elements of like what these games have been for a very long time. It's distinguished by a very, very lightly Pokemon flavored creature collection aspect, and the fact that it is sort of occupying a space where it gets to leverage the entire Final Fantasy bison and all of its parts in terms of tickling your little nostalgia centers in your brain to think what you're looking at is good when it's in fact not. And yeah, I think so far, as far as I've progressed to it, I can say if I wasn't doing it for this show, I would have probably stopped a while ago. Is what I would say.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to the great part later.
We sure will. Yeah, I'm not even as far as you two, by the way. I'm not as far as them. But
not by much.
I'll fully cop. I think I've seen it, but then the things that ZP has said has led me to believe I may in fact not have seen it all yet, which kind of makes me worried.
This game, it stars Lon and Rain. They are twins, and they've got powers. They are giants, spelled with a J. They can toggle between being giants and lils. Lils? Is that what the small version?
Lilla.
Lils, I think. They can turn into chibi versions of themselves. Little chibi versions that look like Funko Pops, basically. Like big square heads is what I mean here. Big, ugly-looking square heads. And the gimmick of this game, like you said, Jeff, is kind of a Pokemon-esque collecting scheme. But ZP, what do you do with the Pokemons when you collect them? How do you use them?
I don't know. You stack them on your head.
You stack them.
To kind of hint to something that Jeff I felt was broaching. This game had apparently a very weird development cycle. Would it surprise you that the original concept of this game, World of Final Fantasy, was a simulation video game akin to, say, Viva Pinata, and that they ran into difficulties and scrapped it, but continued its aesthetical elements? And some of the original game design for the original prototype of this game went on to just be ported to Pictologica Final Fantasy, the smartphone game. But yeah, this is a game where you put things on your head. I guess we're going to do the gameplay first. It is a turn-based ATB-informed combat system. Depending on where your main character stands in the stack, depends on if you are using the giant or chibi lil version of that character, which, as Gino pointed out, they can switch to. The larger characters, funnily enough, were primarily done by Tetsuya Nomura. The smaller characters were done by a different artist whose name I'm dropping on. But yeah, the game's combat involves you catching Pokemon-like monsters, but this is the Final Fantasy universe. And in order to use the monsters, you have to determine if they figure out, like, depending on their size, whether it be small, medium, or large, although we will later get to the extra large monsters eventually, that will determine where you put them on your stack.
Yeah. So you, when you are a giant form, you are a large. So a stack can consist of up to 3 characters, including the main character. So you can have 1 large, 1 medium, 1 small. When the characters are in giant form, they take up the large spot in a stack. When they are in lil form, they take up the medium spot. So depending on what creatures you want to have in the battle, you can come up with different stacks, whether you want to be the meat in the sandwich or the bun. And the stacks are – the way that stacking works in this game is the stats of all characters involved in the stack are combined. So if you have Lon at the bottom of the stack as in his giant form, and then something like a goblin in the middle of the stack, and Tama, the little goober who joins you early on, who speaks like Starfire from Teen Titans. She is small, so she can sit on the top of the stack. So if Lon had 200 HP, Tom had 100 HP, and the goblin had 150, you would end up with 450 HP combined. The same applies with strength, defense, speed. So stacks are basically like one super character. If you unstack everyone, you end up with 3 characters, but your defense is lower, your speed is lower. You know, this is a game where the more damage, you're going to do a lot more damage if you're attacking as a stack than if you split everyone up. There are reasons to split everyone up and unstack, but I would say 99% of the time you want to keep everyone stacked. And as ZP said, like, this is a Pokemon-esque system, so they call it imprisoning an enemy. So you have to meet certain conditions. It is not just always get the enemy to low life like it is in Pokemon. There are different conditions that when you meet them, you can then imprison your enemies and then they join your team. I personally did not realize that there were non-beat up the enemy conditions for capturing stuff. So I have way fewer mirages, which is the term they have for their Pokemon-esque characters. I have way fewer mirages, I think, than ZP does.
Yeah. I've endeavored to catch basically at least one of like everything that has come before me.
I do the same rule. I'm doing the same rule with this game as I generally do with, like, say, Pokemon, which is if you appear before me and I don't have you, I make a minor concerted effort to capture you. If the battle ends and I did not capture you, I move on with my life. I just keep trekking. But I'm going to try, because that's what these games are about, is you making the effort to... At face value, that is kind of the core of all of these different types and flavors, whether it's like Dragon Quest Treasures or Pokemon or this or the other Dragon Quest monster capturing spin-off game that actually predates... Yeah, that predates Pokemon of all things. Biomotor Unitron. You're directed to try and capture things. So I'll put in the effort, similar to Jeff, at least once. Like, I'm not going to ignore this opportunity because that's the point. The problem is that how we go about doing it in this game kind of sucks.
Yeah. So why does it suck, Jeff?
So, you know, this is me straying into things that I think I know things about. I'll say I've played a little bit of Pokemon Emerald, and then I played all of Pokemon Shield, just to say I finished a Pokemon game, and I gotta say I'm good. But my working grasp of Pokemon, based on those experiences, is those are games where if you want to go catching things, what you need is to go buy items called Pokeballs, which you then have on your person. And there are tiers of Pokeballs, but generally speaking, when you're catching, like, you know, level 1 voles and level 1 hamsters and whatever it is you people do in Pokemon, you can just use your generic Pokeball, the one from the cartoon show. And, you know, you can buy more expensive ones, but they're a cheap item. This game does not do that. What it does, and I'm very happy to be corrected here, but this is how I feel. Also, I'll say it hasn't really mattered because I've got it done anyway, is to catch a thing, you need that thing's, for lack of a better word, Pokeball, the imprisoning sphere device. And that appears in your inventory when the game decides it should, is what I've determined. Because what will happen is I will fight mobs of, you know, the unevolved, which we'll talk about that, I guess, form of a chocobo. and I'll be like, oh, I knocked it. Its health is low. If this was Pokemon, I'd throw the ball out. But it's like, now you can't. I'm like, okay, when and it's like, oh, you don't have the imprisoming device for this. Oh, okay. How do I do that? And it's like, we just,
you got to get permission to capture that type of Pokemon by finding like one version of it, or killing it once is a very common strategy of like getting the permission to capture it. And then on top of that,
that's not always the case.
On top of that, Jeff, you're forgetting the fact that you usually have to burn an entire turn for one of your characters on Libra, so is that you just know what the requirements are, which kind of sucks in this game because you basically only have 2 characters. So you lose half of your combat efficacy in the first
one turn
jump
cycle. Dude, one nice thing I will say that they did with Libra is you can, once you've cast Libra, which is the Final Fantasy, sometimes they call it Scan, sometimes they call it Libra. In this game, it's Libra. They let you use Libra on every character in the battle all at once. So once you cast it, you can scan everything, including your own party members, which is
I also want to say
useful.
Something that I appreciate about this game is we'll talk about the other one. For the most part, there's just one Pokeball. You don't have to worry about buying like 8 different flavors that have different elemental affinities that are more effective with certain types of Pokemon and have
this one's good at night.
Higher capture rates. Like, it's just one thing until we get to the part where they introduce the second one.
Until it stops being that.
And that's great. I wish that Pokemon just did that. And if you want to do something where, like, I level up a skill tree where the Pokeballs get 5.678% more effective, fine. But one type of Pokeball, the capture requirements are kind of all over the place. But it's just that process, like that immediate process of new Pokemon, scan. You have a requirement that's not hit you real hard until your health is low. I have to deploy a status effect on you, but probably twice because one time's not enough, and then I'm going to try and capture you. And so this game tries to differentiate the monsters by having unique capture requirements, and that's kind of like how it's starting to deviate from the standard Pokemon formula. The problem is that this has a huge consequence of now everything just takes much longer to capture versus a standard-ass Pokemon.
Yeah, yes. And that's the problem. Like, when you say that there are different capture requirements, some of them can be as simple as, like we said, get the thing's HP low. Make it the last surviving character in a battle. Things that you will do naturally just by fighting stuff. Some of them make this Mirage confused. If you don't have confusion or access to confusion, sorry, tough. You can't catch this thing. Hit it with a specific element of attack. If you don't have it, that element, you can't do it. So there were a number. Once I started paying attention to using Libra, because ZP, you were like, this is nonsense. Why can't I catch everything? I was like, because some of them you just can't be caught for whatever reason. And you were just like, no, it's not that they can't be caught. It's that they have conditions other than hit them hard. And I was like, oh no, you've made this game so much worse. I was happily just going through going, I guess some of these are just enemies to be enemies. They're not catchable. Whatever. But yeah, it turns out there's a bunch that if you actually wanted to catch them all, they're just a pain in the ass to catch. You really need to be swapping which Mirages you have very frequently to have access to the correct status effects to actually catch something. And this game, there are items that you can use to swap out what Mirages you have without going to a save point, but otherwise you have to go to a save point. Which means, if you run into a new Mirage that has a new capture condition that you don't have access to, you might just have to run all the way back to the start of the dungeon to get access to a Mirage that can meet that condition. It's annoying. And another side effect of all of these Mirages is the leveling system. ZP, you seem perturbed by it. How would you describe the leveling system in this game?
It's a sphere grid. It is the sphere grid, but...
Is it a sphere grid?
It has many sphere grids because each monster has its own unique sphere grid, And these sphere grids are individualized because if you capture duplicates of the same monster, your progress on the sphere grid is back to 0. So,
well, each monster has to progress on its own grid, basically.
yeah. So each monster needs to progress on its own grid. Each monster sometimes will even get to progress into its evolved grid, so you can swap back and forth between its standard form or whatever you caught it as, and you can de-evolve it or evolve it upwards. And
the reason you'd want to do that is like the small ones might fit the small part of the stack, and then the larger evolved version.
And
might be
also,
the L
let's say you're having
part.
a hard time capturing the bigger version of a monster. You can take its lower level version and then level it up, and that counts as you capturing the monster, which is cool. I like that. That was neat. This gets to something that I feel like, Jeff, you've communicated. Needing to bop in and out of the menus in this game is maybe the worst part about it. Like needing to actually go, oh, I got a bunch of AP. Let's go to menu. Let's go to basically the sphere grid or the leveling system. Here's this giant list of the monsters that you have in your party right now. You see displayed next to their portrait how much AP or points that you can spend. There's no indication if that means that you can actually unlock a sphere, which drove me crazy.
SP for skill
SP.
points. AP is the magic.
Okay. SP, whatever. And then you have to, one at a time, go through and select each monster, moving around, wrapping around on these sphere grids. And it's very slow. The exploratory parts of it, like something that drove me crazy is that when you bop out of the sphere grid, it resets you to the start point rather than where you last left off, which is something that Final Fantasy X does that I would have greatly appreciated in this video game. But you have to like move around on these grids and then click things, and bopping in and out of every single monster's grid to allocate points is slow. It's incredibly cumbersome. I think this is the part of the game that speaks loudly that this started out as a Vita video game. The
thing that specifically kills me, and like I have many grievances, some of which are pretty petty about this game and down to taste, but like this really drives me up the wall because you've got, your party is 14 deep. It's 12 or 14. You have a lot that you can be managing at any given point. And everyone is passively gaining experience if they're in combat or not. So in theory, everything's leveling up. Now, you don't need to necessarily be doing this. And at a certain point, I would just encourage you not to. But for the characters that you have in your stack that are kind of hot, racked, it kind of behooves you to be, giving them these, +4 to strength and stuff, because that affects your entire tower of, meat that you've built. So you kind of have to. And this is such a minor, stupid little thing, but it drives me nuts. So every one of these little monsters, so like you've got a baby chocobo. When you click on the baby chocobo, a chocobo from the top level menu, it doesn't take you straight to this sphere grid menu, for lack of a better word. It takes you to a like sub menu where you've got the chocobo and then 2 silhouettes of what it could evolve into or be made to evolve into. You then need to click on that chocobo on that screen and then get to that sphere grid. Cool. Now I'm in the sphere grid. And it's not difficult to navigate that. It kind of sucks, but whatever. You click on the thing, the points get spent, done. It is like navigating the sphere grid. I finished that and I'm like, cool. What I would like to do now is get to the next monster on the list of 12 that I theoretically need to do this for. If you hit right, like, R1, bumper, in like any other universe, that should just bumper you to the next character. That is how the sphere grid worked. That is how Final Fantasy IX worked. I'm pretty sure that's how the SNES games worked. This game, what that does is it takes you into like more stats. In order to move to different monsters, you need to cancel back, hit, whatever your B or circle or whatever the hell it is, back out to that sub menu that shows like the evolved forms, then hit bumper, then get to the next monster, click A, enter, and then spend the points and then back out. It adds 2 steps each time you need to do this. Now,
Well,
is
it's
this
even-
petty? Yeah, of
Yes.
course it's petty. But you're going to do this a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It
the thing.
sucks
That's the problem.
every time.
That's the problem.
And the other thing is Jeff, like the information in terms of the stats and the elemental affinities for these these monsters, it's
Mirages.
why these are so obfuscated. It is critical information. And then on top of that, the elemental affinities of any mirage, they don't work like Pokemon, where if a Pokemon is a bug type, every bug type has the same percentages and base stats in terms of its elemental strengths and weaknesses to the other different types of monsters that you'll encounter. They're kind of all different because you'll have a water type that'll be negative 100 points, super weak against lightning. And then there might be a water type that is a water, it's just negative half, but I'm weak to earth. The last water monster that you saw isn't weak to earth. And so you actually need to bop into those menus. And the fact that an ability list or the elemental weaknesses and proficiencies is not easily accessible information the minute that you select the Pokemon's profile, the Mirage's profile, bananas. Terrible. The fact that I have to hit an extra button to pull up a list and then scan or pan down the list to select stats or ability list. Like when you're going through that sphere grid and you're like, is this ability complementary to what you already have? Or is it contradictory to what you already have? No, you can't see their current list of abilities and passives. You have to bop out of the sphere grid, click the monster, hit a button again to pull up a menu that you then scroll down to click the ability list.
Yeah, so if you are listening and think we're being too fiddly on some UX stuff, these monsters tend to level every 2 to 3 battles, I would say, early on. And they usually get between 1 and 2 SP every time. And most things that you can buy cost between 1 and 3 SP. So you are probably, within any given hour, navigating these menus 10, 15 times, I'd say. And it adds up. All of it adds up. As ZP said, this is not a rocks, paper, scissors system like Pokemon where some types are just generically good against other types. Every single one of these monsters, every Mirage has its own bespoke strengths and weaknesses. So you need to know all the specific Mirage every time. You need to know what their stats are. There are like gates where you have to create a stack of Mirages to overcome some environmental puzzle. And it's usually like, hey, you need a stack that's this heavy and that has this much resistance to water or something. And so you need to know, okay, how heavy are my Mirages? Which ones of them are resistant to water? This one's a water-looking serpent. Does it have water resistance? No, it's got water resistance 0. I guess it's wind version. But if I evolve it to its other form, then it's got water resistance. This sort of thing gets very cumbersome very fast, and it becomes even more cumbersome with the fact that there's kind of a PC system like in Pokemon, where you have to go to the Poke Center to swap which Pokemon you want. In here, you need to do it at save points, or you can use a Seraph phone to call Seraphi, your little buddy who helps you control your Mirages. And then once you get in there, you have to... Oh, go ahead. What was that?
That's an expendable item too, right?
Yeah, that's an expendable item.
It's
you
an
have to keep
item.
buying it.
Which is annoying. But yeah, you need to navigate all these submenus so that you know, okay, if I need a stack that has 100 fire resistance, these 3 Mirages in a stack are what do it, because it's not readily apparent what is good against what.
There's just a lot of things like this that are they decided to add an extra step, and I don't know why they would add this extra step. For example, the fast travel system. For whatever reason, you can't just fast travel at these gates or doors that unlock at the beginnings and end notes of levels. You have to go to the door, then fast travel back to the starting hub world, and then the door at the hub world will open up the menu for you to fast travel to any actual location that you previously visited. Why can't you just access that list whenever you use one of the doors in the level that you're currently on? I don't know. That's just how this works.
And here's the thing, for me anyway, like having relatively granular systems and relatively granular statistics and features and affinities and all that isn't inherently a bad thing. See, for example, Pokemon, like the most successful video game franchise of all time by some metrics. Like, clearly this is an idea with some, like, hoof behind it. The issue is, and maybe this is why Pokemon didn't really do it for me, this game is piss easy. You could run through this game in a very optimal way. I'm getting a little ahead of the cart, but if you'll indulge me,
yes,
stacking up characters and building something that is functionally immune to the element that they're going to be using in the chapter you're in, which we'll get to a little bit, the structure of the game. A totally valid move, powerful move, very cool, and that they let you do it, very neat. Totally not necessary. I have reached a point at this game where I am just going to brute force my way through it like a cave person, and I think I have been threatened with death once so far in the first 10 chapters.
I've had sorry.
It doesn't deserve the stats that it has, because you can just beat the piss out of it. You could probably be doing it better, of probably going quicker, but I don't know. There's a point where it's like, okay, in order to progress, I need to push a switch in this level, and to push this switch, I need a monster that has X water resistance to stack with my other weighty thing. Cool. Everyone's made out of water here. Be no problem. And I was just not getting the ability to catch a water monster. I spent an extra, what in the grand scheme of things was 5 to 10 minutes of my life trying to catch a vole or whatever the hell it was. And it just, bro, I was just that I would rather be ripping my own fucking toenails out at this point than look at this one more minute. I cannot stand these people talking. I cannot stand the way any of this looks. I cannot stand that you have to toggle on the fast forward in the already sped up battle mode, but it doesn't let you do it immediately. The battle has to start,
you have to hold
play out 3 or 4 seconds, and then you can toggle it on. And it just sucks so much.
And speaking of the so we've spoken about the Pokemon, the Mirages, the battles. There is a simplified combat and a classic combat. Simplified, it puts attack on the triangle button if you're on a PlayStation controller. It puts defend on X, which is a crime. That's a war crime. Sorry. You can't put defend on the X button and attack on triangle. Attack is X. That's
it should be the souls. It should be R1 for a light attack and R2 for a heavy attack.
It's not triangle. I don't care where you put attack. You picked the wrong one. I do actually. You know what? I do care. It's X or it's look. If you want to do R1, fine. If you're nasty, but do not put it on triangle. You can equip different attacks onto circle and square, and I think square is imprison by default. Unstack is the other one by default. You can configure certain abilities to be kind of on hotkeys with your simplified control scheme, so you can access them quickly. And then if you pick classic, it's just a menu-driven experience like every other game. The simplified control scheme does not allow you to access certain abilities that I've found. You just can't do them. Did you want to use fire? Sorry, you have to go to the advanced control scheme so that you can go to the menu where you have your abilities so that you can cast fire. Because fire is not simple, I'm afraid. So you can toggle it so that the default is the classic control scheme. But like you said, Jeff, this game is piss easy. So actually just hitting triangle and then hitting fast forward, and there's an auto battle button that will just cause the characters to replay whatever the last action they took was. That is a completely valid way to get through 90% of the combat in this game, is just have each of your characters attack once, hit auto battle, and then hold R1. It is a hold to make the game go faster, not a toggle.
It is, so that's an option, at least in the version I'm playing. There's a toggle in options to make that fast forward be a not a hold anymore, but as a toggleable thing.
Yeah.
Which, thank God I found that, because yeah, it's no good.
But the default makes no sense. I don't understand. Like, who would want to hold it?
I think, yeah, who would want to hold it? And I think the simplified menu thing is actually just more complicated than just show me the options, which.
Like,
so
the notion that, I mean, let me just say real quick.
The
notion of going into a submenu to set up the hotkeys so that you can cast one of like 50 spells you have access to is just lunacy. It's lunacy they thought that would be a good simplified control scheme. Like, this World of Final Fantasy came out in between, Final Fantasy. I think was it after 15? I think so.
It was in that milieu, but
it's in that. It's in the Final Fantasy soul searching phase where they're just like, people don't like menu driven stuff anymore. We need to come up with something different, more actiony. But this was kind of more of a throwback, so you end up with this simplified control scheme that serves no one, and then a menu. Like, even the menus of the classic control scheme are ugly. They're ugly.
Yeah, they're unpleasing. I think this might be as good a time as any to talk a little bit about Tosei.
Or just like, why is this game the way that it is, right?
Sure, tell me about Tosei.
Yeah. Why is this game a weird chimera beast? So World of Final Fantasy was produced by Business Division 3 of Square Enix. But they handed over developmental duties to a contractor, pulling kind of like a weird note from Enix, right, Jeff?
Yes. Yeah.
So rather than develop it internally, they, again, borrowing the playbook of the Dragon Quest franchise, they had the figureheads of significant portions of the Final Fantasy franchise head on over to a different development house. This one was Tosei. Now, if you don't know Tosei, that's actually a crying shame, because Tosei probably has made at least a couple of the video games that you actually enjoy in your life, especially if you've played a game that is from the nation of Japan. They're one of, if not the greatest middlemen and mercenary contractors in the entire industry, with their policy of having very little creative input on what they work on, and their anonymity being a selling point. But Jeff, what else is interesting about Tosei, especially the NES era?
Can you list a few games just so that people know?
I mean, just to throw these out there, like games that they've touched in the Final Fantasy world. It's not any of the mainline stuff, but all of the Final Fantasy games that wound up on this converted to the PlayStation. So Final Fantasy Origins, Chronicles, and Anthology, they did all of that work. The Final Fantasy games on the Game Boy Advance, so 1, 2, and then 4, 5, and 6 Advance.
Oh, wow.
They developed all of those conversions. They are purportedly, and I have every reason to believe this is a true number, they've developed somewhere north of 1,000 games over the course of their existence, which started in like 1979. They turn out work. The thing that is said about Tosei, this is, I think, a Jeremy Parrish-ism, is they will do exactly as good of work as you pay them to do. So if you want, a very quickly made, cheap anime licensed game for the NES, and you want it done in 2 months, and you give them N,000 yen to do it, they'll get it done. They turn things in, and those things tend to be like a good middle school essay. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they will not be buggy beyond belief. They will just work, but they will be exactly as good as you ask them to make it. They've also been capable of like good games,
phenomenal titles, like actual like genuine highlights in platforms that they've worked with. They were a major figure with the Resident Evil 0 GameCube game, which is kind of cool. Just ask Braden. They were considered a pretty big figurehead in just getting Game & Watch, those Game & Watch games, especially the gallery games, They've worked with the Dragon Ball franchise. Many of their games are considered good, and kind of like one of the weird exceptions to them getting credited is the Legend of Starfy series, as well as the Scarlet Nexus, which they actually did contribute to in terms of creatively.
Yeah, as time has gone on, their name has started to just appear on things they have developed. Whereas in the past, it was very much this is just a Namco game, and it's like, oh, did Namco develop this internally? And it's like, no, they farmed it out. Yeah, I would posit, I would just throw this out there, that they developed something like 5 to 10% of every game that came out on the Famicom, probably.
Famicom NES, yes.
Yeah, which had 1,041 games. Like, they are prolific.
And they have apparently 2 divisions, one that works in conjunction with other studios that you contracted to, and they have a very reliable, well-respected porting studio or porting division. For example, like Jeff pointed out, they did all of those Final Fantasy PlayStation and GBA ports, but they've also done the Wii version of Okami, the Star Ocean ports to PSP, the Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions PlayStation port.
Oh, wow.
The Chrono Trigger PlayStation 1 and Nintendo DS port.
Those
the
are good
DS
ports
of Front Mission. But and then also most recently, they did the Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch port.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm kind of amazed that they don't have like an accounting software division also. Some other just like...
You're not actually too far off. They also do amusement machine development businesses. So like whether it's ticket counters or redemption machines, they also do that as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So they churn out workman-like software. That is their sole existence. And they've worked in partnership with kind of everyone that, like, any company that probably exists from that Famicom era that's still alive, they have likely collaborated with, including Nintendo. So they've touched Final Fantasy products before. This does not seem like the first original thing that they made. That would have to go to a thing that I am going to say aloud for the first time in the show, that I would consider having us look at some point, called Crystal Defenders, which is strictly speaking a Final Fantasy game. But yeah, this seems to be their first quote unquote original Final Fantasy product.
So that does lead to the question of who did Square Enix send to be their advisors? Because Toze, they're going to need someone that, talks to them about like, okay, we're going to work on this idea together. We're working in a cooperative. Who's going to help guide them? Right, yeah. Jeff?
Who's got the lore Bible?
Which lore Bible did they send? And they sent 2 people. 2 major peoples. Now, the giant versions of the characters were actually almost entirely done by Gino's favorite person in the world, Tetsuya Nomura.
You could
basically did almost all of them. And the 2 people who were responsible with the concept and direction, the first of which is Hiroki Chiba, who is the event director and story director of Final Fantasy VIII. So he's been around for quite some time. Final Fantasy VII event planner, the director and scenario writer with Kazushiki Nojima for 8, the event planner for 10, the event planner and story writer for Dirge of Cerberus, the scenario writer for Type 0, one of 3 people credited for writing the story for Lightning Returns, and then this was his shot. This game was his shot for being the director of a video game for the first time.
Okay, so
now
that's
cool.
Like the through line there, some of the most melodramatic entries in the entire series. What you just listed off.
That was only one half of the people.
I know.
That
I'm just for the theme, just in case anyone listening hasn't played all of those, which we've played almost all of them for this show at this point. Some of the most melodramatic entries in the entire series. Who's part 2? Who's the second?
Part
buddy?
2 was Shinji Hashimoto, a person who actually retired from Square Enix a while ago, who had been around with Square Enix since like 1980s. He was working on the games like Front Mission and some of their other pre-Final Fantasy games, and he really didn't eventually get a full proper credit on a Final Fantasy game until Final Fantasy VII, and then didn't really get a supervisor role until he was attached to be the supervisor of Guys. But Ichi Hashimoto was the Final Fantasy series brand manager for over a decade, the executive officer at the board of directors for Square Enix, but you all know him as being the co-creator of Kingdom Hearts. That was his baby. He made it happen. He was the business wheeler and dealer that pulled up the phone and called Disney. When Disney said no, kept calling, kept pitching him the idea. And he's had producer roles before in the Final Fantasy series. He's been an executive producer for quite a few works, but he was the producer for 9, Gino, so he can do good work. We can't just say that. But he had a pretty big role in guiding this game to, let's say, borrow some creative flourishes from the Kingdom Hearts franchise, which you can tell.
What you're saying is they took the overwrought plot and melodrama guy, and they paired them up with the nostalgia and licensing guy.
Yeah.
That checks out, honestly.
And then Toes had, as a company, had just kind of wrapped up doing the Dragon Quest Treasures games, or like the Dragon Quest Monsters games. So this was kind of like, they're ready. They're ready to do another one of these. Yeah, and so like the scenario writers and the story writers, it's two of the biggest Kingdom Hearts stands, and then also a person who really likes the overwrought melodrama of 7, 8, and 9. And 10.
And 13. And 13.3.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that sets the stage pretty well. So this is a game that has a lot of rooting in the... It's very workmanlike, right? It's rooted. It's a very workmanlike game. It's rough around the edges in some spots. The gameplay, we've said, like the UX, there's some stuff that clearly could have been polished more, but everything functions. It is a completely functional JRPG that 9 times out of 10, it's pretty easy. A lot of the things that we've complained about in terms of annoyance is not difficulty, right? It's not going to block you or anything. It's just like, oh man, if you had spent X amount more time or energy on this, it probably would have been better, but you didn't, and so we've got what we've got. And it also was a game that came out on the Vita and then got ported.
So it was a simultaneous PS4 and Vita release, obviously. Okay. I seem to recall like the PS4 version was, let's say, not $59.99 American dollars.
Yes, I think it was discount.
I think it might have been one of those $49.99 at launch, and then slowly but surely dropped price. You can tell that this game planned for the Vita. And in fact, it runs I don't know if Jeff is familiar with this studio, Silicon Studio game engine. Most people know Silicon Studio as being the Bravely Default and 3D Game Heroes people, but they also sell middleware that is incredibly important. Okay. They made the Orochi 3 engine, which was basically the go-to engine for the PS4, Xbox 360, and PS4, as well as Xbox One for like third-person action games. And this game uses that same engine. They made a far more, let's say, commonly used game engine middleware called Yeebis, which
Beautiful word.
Yeebis is.
Tell me about your Yeebis.
Yeah,
Yeebis and Yeebis 2 were the game engines that went on to help the Luminous engine for Final Fantasy 15. And, the other game that used the Luminous Studio engine.
That was Forspoken, was it not?
Forspoken.
Yeah.
2 wonderful examples of why that engine is not problematic, and Square should keep making things in-house.
Yeah. So quick spread. Get the temp. I'm gonna assume some things here, but what systems are we playing this on? I'll
PlayStation
go.
5.
I'm playing this on a Switch.
I'm playing this on a PC.
Okay, so I'm gonna just tell y'all right now. Then this game's got some load times.
Oh.
Uh,
It don't on mine.
Yeah.
Not necessarily on mine, but I do feel like there are times where bouncing in and out of environments does have a bit of like there's stitching, right?
Yes, it's less that they're long and more that there's a lot of them. Yeah, I will. This feels like a very much drag and drop from the Vita move, which like makes some intuitive sense because like in some sense
I think it's safe to say no matter what, this game started with the Vita. I don't know if you agree, Gino. This started with the Vita and they maybe upscaled it to fit consoles and the PC. So. It's painfully obvious, Jeff, when you get to those anime cutscenes, and you can tell they did not recompress them for moderners.
Man, the first time that happened, I just about it. Ashley was in the room too, and was just like, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
I think on my version it wasn't super compressed. I think they might have used the raw video for my version.
Yeah, look, I guarantee they did a bunch of compression stuff to get that to fit. Like, I have the downloaded version, but, you know, I'm going to assume they got the cheapest cartridges they could get that could reasonably hold this for the Switch version, because that's a normal move on that platform. So, yeah, I don't know what resolution this is actually running at, but if you told me it was a 720p game, I'd believe you. It's a little soft. It's not terrible. But it does, again, it's like, oh, yeah, Vita, right.
Yeah. It looks pretty good on PS5. Like, the audio is fine, I would say.
Know. Sometimes when you do those Vista shots and the camera pans out and it shows you the environments, it's like, oh, no.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's not impressive. It's not trying to put a lot of polygons on screen. That is for sure. That is not what it is going for.
Kind of leads me to my point of, I almost wish they had gone harder with the chibi look, because if this was like a cardboard cutout in background, I think this game would look better and work better, because when you get to the cutscenes that are very much focused on you looking at these weird chibi versions of Final Fantasy characters, like they're very expressive, and the emotions that they get out of these chibi characters is kind of impressive. It's almost like you're watching a stop motion film, but it's not. But yeah, just to have these characters like go around in these very 3D middleware looking environments is a weird thing.
Yeah. So let's turn our attention now to the story, which starts in medias res, I guess. Like it starts, the first half hour of this game I would describe as unintelligible. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah.
I don't know, like, the two characters wake up and they're in Ninewood Hills, which is their town. Lon goes to work at the cafe and Rain is there. Tama, this little raccoon creature, is sitting on his head. He doesn't notice that Tama is there. And then a woman named Anna Crow shows up and basically says, hey, you are two children of destiny. You got to go collect mirages to save this world called Grimoire. Go do it. Except there's more like mystery and misdirects that happen, because it seems like maybe you're in a time loop. Time seems to have stopped in their town. I found the beginning of the game pretty unintelligible until you get to Grimoire, at which point you you go to Cornelia, which is, Final Fantasy 1 town. You meet the Princess Sarah, you meet someone who goes on to become the Warrior of Light, and then it just becomes like bouncing from place to place doing nostalgia stuff. It turns out that your two characters are known as the Giants from the Hills. There's a prophecy that says that they're going to save the world. Wouldn't you know it, they need 4 keys to do it, 4 elemental keys to save the world. Those elemental keys seem to align with fire, water, earth, and shadow instead of wind. Oh, is that maybe a plot point? Who's to say? Yeah, you're just. How would you describe the usage of the Final Fantasy characters in this game, ZP?
It's fan service. Like that's what it is. You sometimes get characters that are the mainstays of their respective games that they come from, and then you get inside baseball callbacks. So this game does play a pretty good balancing act in terms of which characters they select, because it's not just all of the protagonists of the games that you know from the past before this game existed, because you don't immediately get Cloud. Instead, you get Cowboy Tifa. They picked the right Tifa, god damn it. You get Riku in her 10-2 uniform, which was a bummer because I feel like the 10 uniform would have been the inside baseball pick.
You know what? No, there is even more inside baseball. If you go, so in the twins' rooms, there are like descriptions of each of the characters you meet.
Yeah.
And the description for Riku says that Riku is in her 10-2 outfit, but she is the age she is in 10. But for some reason, she's in these outfits. Also, she doesn't know Titus and Yuna yet, but if they ever met, they'd be very good friends quickly. And it's like, what a specific time period to pick her. And also, like, why are you writing her into this outfit? Whatever. Sure, game. That's weird. Okay.
But yeah, there's just enough writing when you start exploring this game's codex and encyclopedia where the writing, I have to say this, the writing for the encyclopedia articles, whether it be the Mirages or the Final Fantasy character bios, that writing is 1,500 times better than any of the in-game story writing, because the weird references, the callbacks, the way that these characters are kind of like pitched to you if you don't know who they are or which game they come from, that is the fan service that I can get behind. What I don't think is so great is the weird marriage of having these characters interact with basically this dumb goof troop of this brother and sister that might be in a time loop, and this awful sounding gremlin that I just wish I could set on fire.
Speaking of the better writing in the Mirage description and character descriptions, do you have a favorite Mirage description?
You're asking me to recall something that I could have told you that, but I forgot.
That's fine. Jeff, do you have any?
I have elected to not engage with that portion of the game very much. But okay, what I'll say is every time I see that description when I first catch a thing, I go like, like it's a good post-surgery laugh. It's not going to break your sutures, but you'll chuckle a little bit. So some care was put into that portion of the game. I will say there's something for you.
Yeah, my favorite, and I only remember it because I think it's very well done, is the floating eye description. And it just says, I believe, pro tip for not sleeping. Pro tip if you don't want to sleep anymore. Imagine this thing's brain and heart gurgling around inside of its body as it's flying. And that, you know what? That's great. It's an eyeball, and then it's supposed to be an animal. Good writing. Way to go. Good.
Actually,
good
I do remember, and I finally found an image of it. So you can find different versions of Seraphi and Tama. Mm-hmm. So Seraphi's alternate version is 2P Seraphi, and she's blue with flower print. And it says, Seraphi's got the blues. No, wait, Seraphi is blue. Back in the days when games were a little more pixelated, blue was a traditional color for player 2. You know, in case you thought 2P was an emoji of Seraphi winking as she sticks her tongue out you. Like that's fun. That's fun. Unfortunately, as I hinted, all of the non-bio encyclopedia writing is downright intolerable if you don't buy into the whole the boy is the dumbass and the girl calls him out in his dumbassery. Because if you like that joke, great, because it maintains that joke for nigh 30 plus hours. And if you don't like that joke, this is going to be a rough ride.
Yeah, I would Yeah, like
where are
it's
your temperatures on that joke?
like stone cold dead. Like,
Do not like the joke. Okay, ZP,
I think
where
there
are
are
you on that
times.
joke?
I think there are times when it works better than others. I think when like my boy cannot tell the environment that he's in, and he's talking to like literal royalty, and he's just saying, "Dude, bro," and then she's like, "Show some goddamn manners, you dipshit." Like that's funny, but that's the joke in every environment. Like when we're just getting a tutorial about how to buy items from Chocolina. And learning about the arena. It's just sometimes it's too much and sometimes it's perfectly done and it's kind of cute. But boy, that's it. That's it.
I'm probably going to, for my own this game has me thinking about other games, and that's something that it is designed to do. I think when you do that, you need to be careful with it in general, because what you can do is remind people that there's other things they could be doing with their time accidentally. So it's not just that playing this is like, oh, look, there's a character from Final Fantasy VIII. I should turn this off and play Final Fantasy VIII. I will feel better. There's also just the some form and function and structure stuff. So when I've been playing this, I've been thinking a little bit about Mystic Quest every once in a while, which also had, let's say, a sense of humor, which scans as, if you've not seen this kind of humor before, this sort of send up like Final Fantasy follies flavored humor can be okay. Okay. I am a person who, I like humor. I am constantly coming up with stupid jokes. Like I'm a relatively fun and funny forward guy. And humor is very subjective. So I'm going to allow for all of that. But the thing about Mystic Quest and other times in like this series, specifically before these games started talking, is if there was like a groan worthy joke, and I'll say Mystic Quest had like a few lines that were pretty groany. It was at least all the text is up on the screen. You can take it in as quickly as you can read 3 lines of text and go, huh, and then just get on with it. Hit A and get to the next thing. What this game does is it talks, and it talks a lot. And every character really, really is in on the joke and is hitting the button for the joke. And the joke sometimes goes for 45 seconds of overacted voice dialogue. And it just makes me want to die. I am probably going to turn the voice acting off, which was actually the way the Vita game played originally. That version of the game did not have VA at all, because there was, space constraints on what a Vita cartridge could hold, and that's what they cut. I think this game would be better, improved for me personally, if it just shut the hell up and just splashed literally all the text on the screen immediately so I could read it and then just get going. Because I want to drown both of these people. And I'm considering drowning their voice actors as well.
It's a little bit better in the Japanese voice acting version.
Disagree.
I've actually been able to identify which animes these voice actors come from. You get a lot of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure voice actors. You get a lot of like Jujutsu Kaisen character actors.
I actually found them charming. The joke worked for me, and I think it comes down to this, why it works for me. Lon being a dumbass and Rain being not smart, but like not a dumbass.
Yeah.
There's
straight man, sidekick, good typical archetypal comedy stuff, right?
Yes, it's Abbott and Costello stuff.
Yes.
There are not enough games in this series that star a dumbass, that star a moron who is just being guided around by the nose, just constantly being told, no, do not put your tongue in that toaster, you're gonna die. And the juxtaposition of that in this franchise, I just found a little refreshing, because it's a franchise that very much up until now it takes itself very seriously. Like the game we played before this was 15, a game where everyone's brooding constantly. The main character is brooding constantly, and then his macho, manly men, bros, are trying to keep him entertained. Having a game where the main character is a dum-dum, and the game is in on the joke, and they understand that, and, I really like, say, for example, the other character in this series who I think fits that description in Laguna from FF8. He's he's a dum-dum who just happens to be in the right place at the right time, and so he is important. And it works for me. I like their little slapstick. I don't mind Tama that much. Tama with its voice inflection, that Tama says "the" in the wrong place, like "be still the heart," or something like that. Like when Tama gets startled. And I know that it's a voice tick that I'm sure made more sense in Japanese. It's not the most endearing thing in the world, but I don't find myself wanting to stab out my ears, which, I'm not going to go to bat and say it's the best written thing. I don't think it is. I just found it largely inoffensive and charming, which I think is what they were going for. But yeah, your mileage may vary. If you are not here for the jokes that are being made in the first few minutes of the game, it's that forever. So you'll know if it works for you or not. So plot-wise, I mean, I don't know that there's too much to cover because it's mostly reference city. You are, moving around between Grimoire, which is like these floating series of islands. There is a evil kingdom, the Bahamutians, that seem to control the bulk of society. They control mirages. They are giants, and they basically have a society credit system. That's their evil thing. They take over cities, and then they create societal credits that you need to work towards. And once you hit a certain credit level, you become a general or something, and you become taken care of by the Bahamutians. And they're evil. They're doing bad stuff. What was your favorite? Oh, go ahead, ZP.
Okay, I guess we're not going to talk about the hints that there's the story in disguise with the people who are like from space, and like we get hints that our protagonists, brother and sister, are special warriors that have forgotten what they once did, and we get hints that maybe they will be called upon to finish a battle or a destiny or something like that, and we learn and experience and run into certain antagonistic forces that are in spooky armor with people who taunt us and tried to send challenges to us. But yes, for most of what we played, the story is go to a location that's a callback to a different Final Fantasy game, interact with other Final Fantasy characters. Sometimes the characters are in the respective worlds where you feel they are familiar to. Sometimes they aren't, which is kind of
they're
always
just
funny.
There. Yeah,
so
we've run into, at this point, Warrior of Light, and he's very much just like Warrior of Light hanging out at Cornelia, the Warrior of Light town. We met Refia from Final Fantasy 3 DS version. She's just a healer. She hangs out with you for a little bit. You meet Charlotta from Crystal Chronicles. Is it the DS game? Is that which one she's from? She's the cat girl. We haven't played that one yet.
Charlotta is one of the Crystal Chronicle games, but not the mainstay Crystal Chronicle games.
You meet Yuda. She tells you like some plot points at one point. We meet Quistis from 8, and she gives you a boat. You meet Ferris, and most of these cameos are maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Like, they show up, they do a thing, and then you move on. You eventually unlock this character called the Girl Who Forgot Her Name, and she gives you the ability to summon those characters. CP, you have an opinion on her.
I think these are the best parts of the entire game because these missions are short. They boil down the combat to a single boss fight, and it is all pageantry and character stuff. And you just see these characters that you are familiar with act as they normally would, or where we last saw them, and just living on the fat of the land. Like when you do Riku's mission, she's just completely obsessed with getting treasure and really upset that all of these treasure chests that she keeps opening are mimics. And, Charlotta gets along with Refia, the Final Fantasy III character that's here. And they talk about wanting to run an inn to capitalism. And the best way to run the inn is by getting the dreaded evil Ice Queen to scare people into her inn. Because capitalism. And so that character stuff is great because the game tells you, yo, this is an easy mission. Play whatever you got. Oh, this mission is hard. Think about your strategies and your tactics. Immediate transition into a battle. No navigation, no open world stuff. Just battle, cutscene, battle, sometimes a second battle and boss fight, then cutscene again. And so it cuts out all of that fat. And the thing that I think we have not talked about that I feel really drags this game down is the actual navigation part of this. Because the amount of time of just navigating these environments and walking around in these dungeons, you don't really get a lot out of it, even though it is very rote, very familiar. It's just not very fun. Like the dungeons are one step longer than they probably should, only because it gives you an extra opportunity to catch more mirages. And that's why I liked the missions that you do with the Girl with No Name, because, hey, just a battle, and then you get a cutscene. You get to actually get the funny fan service that feels earned because it doesn't involve your two little dipshits, and it's the Final Fantasy characters that you actually care about.
Yeah, it's if you're gonna play that nostalgia note, play the note, because all of the OC do not steal elements of this game are just not doing it for me. And I don't want to be a stick in the mud too much about it because one of us is having fun. But if we could just condense it down to tickle my brain fruit in the most basic, primitive way possible, that's kind of the way I would prefer to ingest it. And every one of the Gino just stepped away for a little bit, folks who are listening, but while we're here, like I said, reminded me of other media. So every segment of this game lingers maybe a little too long. And I say segments because unlike other games in this series, though this has been touched on, I suppose Final Fantasy 15 actually did this a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is a game that is explicitly broken into discrete chapters. And the way these chapters are introduced is shockingly similar to the way every episode started in the hit show Final Fantasy Unlimited.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to remind me of a bad thing, you've nailed it. Because every time I see that, I just think of I will be your guide. It's a bad note to play. And were they doing that intentionally? Of course they weren't. But just takes me out of it. But every one of those, you get a monster of the week, and then there's some sort of dungeon-esque environment you wind up in. Every one of those is
like the game gets a lot out of being in a chapter format, Jeff.
No.
I get they could have done what Final Fantasy 12 did, where you're navigating from one overworld to the next, and then you're just fast traveling to previous environments. But the whole chapter format, the whole episodic pageantry, it doesn't really get anything out of it. And again, not to be super negative as well, Jeff, but I don't know why these environments are really as long and drawn out as they are, because it's not like they're doing anything super creative to the formatting and design of the dungeons. No. It's just a lot of weird static camera angles that feel like they're PS1 horror game camera angles where it's like, right, so I got to go up this thing? No, that's part of the background. Like weird, frustrating tidbits like that, right?
Yeah. And like there's an overhead, oh God, what would you call it? Mini map of every one of those, which does not necessarily, that's a static, ordinal map or whatever. But yeah, the perspective kind of changes just enough that it's like, okay, can I get up to this ledge? It looks like I should. No. Okay, let's reference this little map. Whereas if that map either rotated or didn't exist, or the camera stayed a little more fixed, it just feels a little odd getting around. And then yeah, every one of these dungeons is, you invoked 12. Every dungeon in 12 is like actually like 6 or 7 little, they're kind of like Monster Hunter, right? Like every area is like 8 or 9 little chunks stitched together. This game kind of does a little bit of that. But I feel like every single one of them is like 1 or 2 too long. For what amounts to basically space to ultimately grind and acquire more rodents and such. And it's just, I think, adding playtime to a thing and adding opportunities for experience that I don't know if you necessarily need. Because again,
especially
it's a pretty
in a game,
beatable game.
Yeah, especially in a game that's where, even though we've complained about how there's like unnecessarily introduced mechanics and depth, in quotations, depth to what is essentially a monster battler. Yeah, you basically click one attack to hit. And it's not even like in this game where if you use a water attack on a water monster that you have to only in very extreme circumstances do you worry about that water monster or mirage, absorbing your attack. You still do damage most of the time. And so when you spend a lot of time on these environments and dungeons that feel like they're just bigger than they need to be and things are slower than you need to be, man, the running speed in this game, it's just like 2 levels, 2 clicks too slow.
I wish there was a run button because the basic run animation isn't fast enough. And I mean, having to unlock traversal abilities just to get around these dungeons it's a nuisance.
Is there really
it seems like it should be cooler than it is.
Is there any real I'm not going to go back to environments. I tried to do it, and it's actually, like I said, the way that the fast travel system works, where you have to bop back and then bop to the home world and then go to the door in the home world and then have to fan through a menu to go back to old environments. That just sucks, and I just don't want to do it. But is there really any reason to like worry genuinely about not having the monster to ride and get rid of this environmental block to get this chest over here?
So sometimes there are good items or good, like there was a section where there was definitely an enemy that was above my level because the thing that was blocking me from getting over was an ability I probably wouldn't have had normally. So like that has happened. I did backtrack once to the area in the second town, kind of where you meet Ferris, that like pirate level, because there's a pirate ship that's full of treasure, and you have to enter a passcode with bells to get that ship to show up, and I didn't recognize the pattern the first time, so I doubled back, and it is definitely annoying that the encounter rate's still the same, right? So when you're doubling back, you are still running into these enemies, except now you completely outclass them, and they are just being a nuisance, right? You're just getting hit with these random encounters that don't give you experience worth a damn. They don't give you money worth a damn. And the game is still pretty slow. So, like, there are reasons sometimes to double back, especially if you didn't get some of the hidden content in the dungeons. But it's not compelling enough. I don't think that you should do it if you're not enjoying the game.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not just that. It's also that moment to moment, if the game's not really doing all that much to justify its weird chapter formatting, because it really doesn't. It doesn't get anything, like we said. breaking things out into this chapter other than you're in a new environment, so expect new characters to exist in this world with your dipshit protag for like 10 minutes. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, the dungeons, some of the throwbacky stuff I do appreciate. Like, I like... It did throw me a little bit when you went to Nibelheim and it was basically Midgar. Like, they called it Nibelheim, but it was Midgar, and Tifa was there, and Rydia was there. Like, that was a little odd. There's, like, all of the characters have some memory, it seems like, or they're somewhat related to the game they come from, but they're not exactly the same.
Like that's one of the cooler, that's one of the more interesting things that this game does with its core narrative, with its novel or new characters, is that you as a Final Fantasy fan look at this Nibelheim and you're like, wait, that's not right. And it kind of slightly, ever so slightly, leans into the fact that something is up. But then it delays the follow through for whatever reason, because it's really not doing that of an interesting story with its core characters. It's,
that's
I think
kind of
it's
the problem.
time to be weird stuff, right? Like it's going to be that probably, but
probably
even Kingdom Hearts gives you a core story with a cast of characters with more meat on the bone than what this game has done in that time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think at the end of the day here, like, the cameos are cute, but they're not enough. You have to kind of be okay with the slapstick that's going to come up in the interstitial parts. And the gameplay is not that compelling. It's fine. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the throwback bit with Snow. Like, that was kind of fun. He asked you to help beat a giant flan because in 13-2 he has to beat that stupid giant flan, and he's like, hey, we need to beat the giant flan because otherwise it gets too big, and I fought it once when it got too big. And he's like, we got to kick its butt. And they're like, which part of it is butt? And then he goes, it's all butt. And then you fight it, and then smash cut to the battle. That's pretty funny. Or like Squall goes, hey, have I drawn enough thunder to fight all of these enemies? And he's like, yeah, I did draw enough thunder. You know, it's a little, you know, it's fine. Yeah, all of it gives me a little chuckle, and it's fine.
Yeah, I think when it's coloring in the pages that I'm familiar with, and again, do I sound like a slobbery fanboy about old stuff? Yeah, that's who I am. I don't think I've
but that's what the
hidden
game's
that
for.
very well.
Like,
yeah,
they're in this.
That's its strength. That's its core competency. You know, making my brain fruit feel good every once in a while. So when it's doing references to Final Fantasy 13-2, part of me goes like, yeah. When it's going like, I heard you say steak, but I thought you meant the food steak. So we're gonna riff on food puns for 3 minutes for no reason. While the game could just be like, hey, we unlocked the Colosseum. Like something that in a maybe less, you know, a game less concerned with finding the funny would literally take 2 seconds. We've extended that to 90 seconds of excruciating, like 4 kids level comedy. So yeah, so it takes reasonably hard little, it doesn't take hard swings, but it takes consistent swings. I would say it's batting like 250.
Yeah, I think
it's connecting every once in a while. You know?
Yeah, it says something that, like, one of the most fun parts of the game is when you summon a character from the mainline series to do a super attack, and then the music cuts to their music for a little bit, and I'm like, hey, that's Tifa's theme. Awesome. Or, you know, hey, that's the FF7 battle music. Great.
Yeah, some of the music's actually been cool, like little slightly subtle, reworked, remixed stuff from games that, again, that's familiar. Those are neat. Can't poop too much on that.
And I like how they've remixed some of the dungeons. Like, we stopped right after we got Squall, and they have an area that is Figaro Castle, which from 6, you know, it goes underground and it travels. It's in the desert, and then you get thrown into their prison, and the prison is the D District prison from FF8. You know, the big circular prison in the desert that's underground.
Yeah.
So they took the underground 6 thing and combined it with the underground 8 thing. And I'm like, oh, look, they found connective tissue and they combined them.
I'm glad you mentioned that level, Gino, because it's the perfect example that they don't always pick the characters you know and love from the franchise, right?
Yeah, they put Shulk in the game. You know, Shulk from FF Dirge of Cerberus. So she's in there. Yeah, they pick some deeper cuts. I didn't expect to see Quistis, honestly.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering if Zell will show up.
Quistis with her belly button humorously prominently there in your face.
Because they're just all torso, these little guys. Yeah, so, you know, and we'll probably have more to say. They seem to have introduced a Pokeball system right at the end here. I think, ZP, we should save that for later to see how much it matters. Because right now it's I'm scared. I'm scared that they might have made imprisoning even more of a nuisance. But I've only captured the default monsters that they have told me I must capture. So I don't know if it's going to end up being a giant pain or if it's just something I will not notice going forward.
Only time will tell. But yeah, this podcast, God damn it, we have not finished a Final Fantasy game. God damn it.
Oh yeah,
This isn't the one.
No,
this isn't the one that we're not going to finish.
Yeah, like, to be clear, it is perfectly reasonable to get through this game. But I will tell you right now at the end, I'm going to go, that went a little long and not my favorite thing. But that's okay. We're doing the work for you.
This is much more of a second screen game than it is a mainline game, the way that some of the other games in the series have been. But yeah, we finished 2. We finished 15. We finished 13. We will finish WAF. WAF will not end up at the bottom of this list. It will probably end up in the muddy middle somewhere.
Don't start talking yet.
I don't know.
It's not going to end up at the bottom of it. The bottom of this list is vile.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We haven't finished it yet.
Yeah, that's you know. Let's play out the string.
Let's play it out.
Let's have the conversation.
Troy Baker was like, that flan is all but. How bad could it be? It'll be fine. We'll be fine.
You say
Any
that.
closing thoughts on World of Final Fantasy?
We're gonna finish it, but boy, it's a matter of enthusiasm, man.
It's a shame that Rebirth just came out.
Yeah.
God, a Final Fantasy game came out. This is not the one they're talking about, though.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, shit. There are different versions of this game that we forgot to talk about. So Jeff and I are playing the Maxima version. I think, Gino, you're playing the base vanilla version of this game.
I don't know.
Can you
if I recall correctly.
I don't know. I'm playing the version that was available for free with PS Plus, so I don't know if it's the Maxima or the base version.
Well, we're going to get new mechanics. Well, we already interacted with one of these mechanics, the Champion Mirror Jewels, where you get like the buttons and medals of certain characters like Varian. But did you notice that when you checked out your version of the game that it says mini games? Would you like to play mini games? We haven't gotten to that part of the game yet.
Yes, I did see that.
What if I told you this is the part where they decided to add in the Final Fantasy 15 stuff post-release?
Oh, no.
Anyways, yeah.
All right. Jeff, did you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have come through the long dark night of the soul, and I have a job that's going to start on Thursday, and I'm very excited. I gotta say, if you had told me, cool, the last couple days you're going to have of this weird wintering period of your life, you should probably spend putting a lot of time into World Final Fantasy. It makes me want to get one of the bricks I have outside and just kill
Jeff,
you.
It's good to know that you have other things that you can play in the background alongside World of Final Fantasy while you dislike this game, like, I don't know, Ultima 9.
We're your friends. We love you.
I really,
You
yeah,
chose to hang out with us.
I like being on a podcast a lot. I like being shown new stuff, and
Thank you, dear listeners. World of Final Fantasy, a game that we're playing. When we come back next time, we'll have played more of it. Maybe all of it, maybe not. We're not sure. But a reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Thank you, ZP.
Hey, Gino, I've got a joke. Why are there no flowers at the Trabia garden? Because all the seeds are dead.
Thank you, Jeff.
thank you, Gino. It's been nice to hear from you.
And thank you, dear listeners. Till next time, peace. All the seeds are dead. How dare you? They died in the line of duty. They were troops and they died. And you can't joke about that. They were child troops.
Love a child soldier.